Okay, so far we're seeing Tesla stock on a roller coaster, but for both the stock and the business to really take off, there are 6 key things that matter. First and foremost is the Robotaxi rollout. Yesterday, Ford CEO Jim Farley actually said, "We know the FSD system and what's out there, and we're a lot closer to that partnering decision at Ford." Second is AI and robotics. Well, just yesterday, Tesla posted 68 job openings in 5 locations, all for Tesla Bot. Looks like Tesla's serious about ramping bots. Third, the new affordable vehicles still appear to be on track, and we'll explain why sales volumes might appear weak. We'll also cover the Elon effect on sales, hints at manufacturing expansion, and the strength of the financials. So we've got the bulls here with us today. I've got Tesla Boomer Mama, the Queen, Alexandra Mertz, Jeff Lutz, also known as Mr. Incredible, the Rational Bull, and our special guest this week is Cern Basher, the Bot Bull. Welcome, everybody. How are you all doing?
Hi, Herbert.
Great.
Hi, Herbert.
Awesome.
Lots of real new news that just popped up this morning and yesterday, and some really important ones. So first, we got Robotaxi. We're going to listen into Ford CEO, what he says about, he actually names the word, he says the word FSD and partnering. We're going to take a look at the job openings for robots and some real good analysis here from Jeff talking about why EVs sales might be down. So some people are misinterpreting that. And these are the key things. I think if you're following Tesla, you care about the Tesla stock, you need to be tracking all of these. And that's what we'll cover today. So let's get started with Ford CEO Jim Farley. Let's play this. This was on an earnings call. Listen in to what he says. This is the earnings call yesterday. Listen into what he says, especially the last few sentences, and we'll look into it.
We're at that point where we have to decide, look, level 3 is around the corner. Blue Cruise is now over 300 million miles. Customers are still paying for it. We did drop the price, by the way, so it is getting commoditized to some extent, but it is still a great opportunity. But the capability in the company is growing. All those Argo people that came with Ford, they are developing a really nice level 2, level 3 system that we think will be among the best in its execution. We may not be the first. We may not grab all the headlines, but look at Blue Cruise. Blue Cruise is continuing to win all the consumer awards for the best operating system. On level 2 plus is around the corner. Level 3 we think is a huge unlock on highway miles. Eyes off. I think we're in good shape with our internal capabilities, but look, we're not so Pollyannish about our own capability that we're not going to look at other people's system or not believe that level 4 personal autonomy is going to be interesting at some point. They're making a lot of progress over there in level 4. And it is time for us, not just in the US, but globally, to start looking at, and that's why we made some of the announcements we did today, because we need a strong strategy team to decide, do we partner? Do we continue to ride our own team into this level 4 personal autonomy? And I think you're going to find, just like our move on Argo, we'll be thoughtful and practical. We won't get in love with the size of the market. We'll make a practical decision. And I think we'll be well positioned. I'm very confident in Sammy and Doug and their technical prowess. They know the FSD system. They know what's out there. They know the Waymo system as it gets democratized for level 4. Individual level 4. And so I think we'll make a good decision. But I think, Adam, we're a lot closer to that partnering decision at Ford.
Okay, wow, right? Same sentence. He said, we know the FSD system, we know the Waymo system, we know what's out there, and we're a lot closer to the partnering decision. Let's start off with you, Cern. What did you hear? How likely is this? How important is it to Tesla?
I don't know how important it really is to Tesla, but for Ford, I think it's critical. And I think we've speculated for a while that Ford's been working on this, and clearly they have. I think they even have a Skunk Works project of some sort out in California. And maybe even some Tesla engineers have been involved in that, although who knows? The decision to go with Waymo versus Tesla, it would be kind of shocking if they selected Waymo, in my opinion. Unless Google promised to buy, hundreds of thousands of vehicles from Ford. I could see if that was part of the deal, then they might go that route. But if they're really looking at the opportunity from a technology perspective and the ability to be able to scale, Tesla's FSD, I think, is the clear winner.
Thank you so much, Cern. Exactly. It is a clear winner. We know that, but does Ford do? So, Alexandra, about 6 months ago, I think 8 months ago, you did a really deep dive on the Skunk Works division of Ford. You have some good ideas and thoughts about, is Ford a right partner, and maybe some other. What's your thinking today?
Thanks for reminding us, Herbert. Yes, it was in a Cyber Bulls in September. I did the deep dive into Skunkworks and anything and everything that came out this week. The Bloomberg article, Gary getting excited, and the earnings call now has nothing new compared to that September article, right? Nothing. So as Cern said, this is much more important to Ford than it is to Tesla. I, of course, will cheer it on if we have the first official licensing partner. But let's face it, Ford is actually every day being late on the EV game. It's brave what they're doing. The Skunk Works plan is to first come out with a truck. I think that's their clientele and a good way to do it. We're, in my view, 3 years, if not more, from that point. And then the second problem is that Tesla's made it very clear over and over again. Elon has said it. They want only partners that can do this in the millions. They don't want some small producer of a couple of 10,000 or 100,000 cars. They want somebody who can scale this and is going to scale EVs. And I love the idea. I'm happy he's saying all this because it just makes the whole FSD licensing idea much more popular. If it comes from somebody that's outside of Tesla, Ford has always good standing with all the journalists and all the TV channels and all that. So that's going to help a little bit. But in the end, Tesla has a deal with Ford or not, it will not make a difference. Not at all.
Okay, not at all, hey? So just to remind everybody, this is exactly what he said at the last bit there. We're not so Pollyannish about our own capability that we're not going to look at other people's system or not believe that level 4 personal autonomy is going to be interesting at some point. Okay, so he's admitting that we need to look at what's out there. I think you're going to find, just like our move on Argo, their partnership with Argo that helped them get to autonomous, some capabilities, will be thoughtful and practical. I think he said Doug and another guy know the FSD system. They know the Waymo system. I find it curious that he mentioned FSD first, but if he mentioned FSD and Waymo, I think we'll make a good decision. But I think we're a lot closer to that partnering decision at Ford. So it's almost like a done deal. We're going to be partnering. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's indicative of deal flow when you're thinking about the valuation of Tesla and you start hearing more and more of this noise now public. If you're an analyst and you're looking at the company, you're looking at it both on its encapsulated valuation and you're looking at it in a sum of parts valuation, and that's where it starts getting a little crazy. So yeah, I think the commentary is correct that you wouldn't lose your mind about Ford in isolation. But in my experience, as this rhetoric grows and as the conversations flow, and you have to start piecing these things together. You heard what Elon said on the earnings call now about multiple concurrent partners and a much rising level of interest. What you have to start thinking about is the valuation, the sum of parts, and now the shots on goal kind of concept of like in hockey or in American soccer or football, the whole concept of getting more shots on goal than higher quality shots on goal is an important thing. You have something that people are interested in, and so I do think that's of value, and I think it's indicative of a rising level of conversation and deal flow, and I think there is value in that. And again, when you look at Tesla as a sum of parts valuation, you start thinking about supercharging, you start thinking about FSD licensing, you start thinking about the whole autonomy piece and Robotaxi. It becomes more than a company that bends metal and puts hardware in the vehicle. And I think that's the key takeaway is what does this do to the sum of parts, and is it indicative of greater deal flow and conversation?
Jeff, I think you said Ford might not be as big of a company as you're hoping for, but wouldn't it be pretty cool if it was Ford, because Ford was the first to buckle and bend the knee and do the supercharger partnership, and everybody knows what happened afterwards. So then it's just symbolically, I mean, it probably doesn't matter who partners with Tesla first, but Ford might be kind of cool.
It does. And I think there's also a conversation at some point. I know every kind of like purist on EV is like, no, about ICE and autonomy. And we don't have to get in that conversation. But at some point, the conversation on autonomy and safety, it becomes less of a convenience item and more of a necessity item when it becomes more and more clear that less and less people will pass away as a result of driving their vehicle. And all of a sudden it becomes more of an urgency than a nice to have to legislate something like this. We're a bit away from that, but you can kind of start seeing, this is what you do when you analyze companies and you analyze things. You try to start looking at these various threads and see if there's anything to pull on. And then you try to assign probabilities to these things happening. And you'd have to think at some point this turns from a nicety and a necessity to a necessity. And what does that mean to the valuation? I also think it's very important for Tesla to vocally, and the CEO to be very vocally open about licensing the technology for fears of, antitrust and so forth. The fact that it's out there and he's been publicly very open to these conversations, I think is important.
Okay. So the most important thing is Robotaxi for this year, right? And so there's a couple of things I want to bring up about that and ask the panel here. Number one is when we heard the earnings, it was good news. When we heard him say it's coming in June, okay, that was a solid plan, means it's coming earlier. But then he also said, we're going to dip our toes in. So that means to me that in the next 6 months, it could be very slow, small number of cars, just testing everything slowly, dip our toe in, and then expand, and grow. And we're not going to have customer cars to be part of the equation until next year, second half of next year, actually. So in a way, he pushed it forward, but in a way, he slowed down what the expectations are, right? And then let's talk about that first, and then I want to bring up his comments about China. So why don't we start with you, Cern? What did you take about what I just said there?
Well, just before I answer that, Herbert, just before I lose this thought about Ford, I'm sorry to backtrack a little bit here,
no
but
problem.
I wonder sort of if Ford would want to hedge their bets a little bit and actually do a partnership with both Waymo and Tesla. With Tesla, clearly there's going to be a timeline of work in terms of integrating FSD into the vehicles, right? And so I don't know how quickly that timeline can take place. It might be a couple or 3 years. By then, it might be too late. So I'm wondering if in their mind, it might be easier to partner with a Waymo, slap all the sensors on the car and have it work, much more quickly. If that's even the case, that may also be a 2-year process. But I'm wondering if Ford would be interested in hedging their bets there. So that's one thought that comes to mind, is in terms of the whole discussion around Ford.
Okay.
I think it's possible. I think the Tesla offering is a Robotaxi and a consumer offering. The Waymo offering is just a Robotaxi offering. And in any one of these deals, you're studying the lifetime unit economics of the deal, and you're trying to figure out what is it going to cost me, and what will consumers be willing to pay for it. And this is where you go back to lowest cost always wins, and of course quality always win. I would just throw one interesting thing out about Ford. Tesla's going after the consumer passenger sedan robotaxi market, which is, I need something to take me from point A to point B, or I'm going to be transporting packages or whatever, point A to point B. What if Ford's angle could be on the whole robotaxi thing of like, we're known for trucks, we're known for work, we're known for that kind of workflow, and what if there are needs for that, where all of a sudden the cost to serve, instead of buying this $105,000 truck, you need particular work you need a particular type of truck for a particular type of work, and all of a sudden they create a robotaxi network for that. Again, it's out there, it's wild. It's just, I think people are going to be looking at the vehicle as a service thing on multiple levels. It's not just going to be passenger sedans. It may be many different forms.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I think it was last year. Then Ford came out and said that we're going to refocus our attention on the commercial side, even more than the consumer side. But just this week, Ford did make rearrangements that they're now reconnecting the EV division with the gas car division. They're reconnecting it with several executives. All right, so Alexandra, maybe you can answer that. Do you think that Robotaxi plans are you thinking that it's now further ahead or it's now pushed back because of the comments that Elon made about Robotaxi?
I think it was always a while to go. So I don't know whether it's now further back, but I don't think it's closer. When I hear those comments, I feel everybody is, hoping this is something immediate. And there may be an immediate announcement, but there won't be an immediate money flow. I just want to come back to the earnings call where Elon was very clear saying the OEMs that now expect that Tesla goes to them and helps them develop this. That's not the plan. Buy a Tesla, break it apart, put everything and understand how it works, then build that, bring us the plans if you want to, but we're not going to do that for you. And I think the key phrase was, once our FSD is everywhere in the in Northern America, then we can concentrate on that. So I just don't want to jump on that hype that Ford is that and this is happening and this is happening soon. It's not. I completely agree with Jeff. It was the right thing to do and to say to not be accused for monopolistic market dominance, because that's what it will be. Saying that you want to partner, entertaining initial talks, but this is not. I mean, I could be completely wrong again, but in my view, this is not something that's just around the corner, and it's giving Ford some hopium speech, right? I mean, this is all much funnier to talk about possible FSD partnerships than about their miserable numbers. It also plays into we're better than GM, because GM would obviously never sit at table with Tesla. So there are a couple of things in there that make sense for this to happen. But is it realistic? I don't think so. Do I think that Tesla wants this to be realistic? Even less.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, before I move off, sounds like you guys want to keep talking forward. Are you guys ready, or you want to have more comments?
I think there's a lot.
No, let's go there. We have all these comments. We have all these comments about politics. I think we should really talk about the elephant in the room, which is the stock price, before we talk about anything else. There's so many people here that are so sensitive to the stock price movements.
Yeah.
Let me tell them again, don't be in a stock if you're expecting immediate returns. You're in this stock because you expect a 3 to 5 year return. If you get heartaches when the stock goes down 10 or 15%, get out of the stock, go to something, passive dividends, whatever. There's stuff for you, but you're not built for this if you're in a worrisome situation now. Same with, can I support what Elon is doing? If you don't believe in this man, don't be in Tesla. I told you since October, this is now a Trump and Elon stock. So we have a double risk here. We don't only have an Elon risk, which was always a risk. I mean, Elon sometimes shoots himself in the foot, and there we are holding bags, right? If this is not for you, if this is too much for you, if you're just here, going into these YouTube comments and spewing your hate because you're still in a stock you don't want to be in, please, for heaven's sake, sell, get yourself a hobby, get nicely dressed, make your wife happy, but get out of here.
You're assuming it's all men?
Oh, isn't it? Have you ever heard a woman?
I guess. No,
Yeah, the audience is mostly 90% men. That is the truth. I mean, so I'll make a quick comment. I think all four of us should. I do think that there was a lot of Elon concern last year. Remember Twitter, just the comments he was making. There's always been, and he's very controversial. And then, of course, when he started becoming political, that started, the Elon hate started to rise. But as we pointed out, it didn't really, we believe, did not affect the sales of the cars, and it did not necessarily affect the stock at that point. It might affect the stock for a day, but not sustained. Now, the reason we know that is because surveys came out later, and we saw the sales, and it didn't really affect it. It was kind of this wash. Having said that, today, in the last several weeks, the last several months, I think the Elon hate is now at the peak level it's ever been. And I do think that it is now affecting the stock and now affecting the business. to some extent. I don't know how much, but it certainly is. I don't think we can say at this point that it's not. So that is the case. And I think what you're saying, Alexandra, is if you do feel that way, then you should not be part of this, because it is now split into two big segments here. Jeff, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, a number of things. First off, social media is a psyop. So if you look at the comments on social media and you measure, and I did it, by the way, did this for a living. When you ship a consumer product and you have social media, you have reviews, you have sentiment out there. You want to objectively scrape that data and measure it and understand how your products are being received. And what I would tell you is that there's a difference between that and kind of the net promoter score of your product, meaning like the loudest voices of the fringe on either side go out in social media and things go viral, things get amplified. So just be careful to kind of just discern, one way or another there. And I think when you start looking at is there damage to sales or damage, you have to kind of look at it from a net view as well. Like, are there people being added as well? But I mean, yeah, you can have, I think if you're coming into this and you don't have proper analytics, or you don't have it's very hard to get some of this data too, by the way. You can kind of come to any conclusion you want. But in terms of like the products I buy, and I don't go and look up the CEO and look up every single detail of what they said and what their political positions are. And I do more due diligence than what the news tells me that the person's saying. I really want to understand, what if there's something that's out there that's critical. I really want to dig into it, look at multiple sources, and understand it, because the news filters information in a way on both sides of the equation I find to be distorted and not helpful. So just realize when you're looking into the social media verse, it's kind of a reality distortion field. It's not actually how people make decisions with their pocketbook. Some people will. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with anything being zero, like there's no impact, or it's maximum impact, it's the worst ever. I don't agree with any of those statements. I don't think they're quantifiable. But and at the same time, you think like Michael Jordan, this famous quote of, Republicans buy tennis shoes too. You can't just look at it kind of from one angle and think that just only the bad things happen, nothing good happens. But yeah, I'm sure there's some net effects. The question is how permanent is it? And then back to Alexandra's point, like what's your time horizon on your decisions? I mean, if you're a trader, then you're not going to like the fact that, the CEO of the company has a microphone with, 215 million people at it, and he goes to the microphone anywhere from 10 to 50 times a day. You're probably not going to like that. And he's fairly opinionated. So you have to decide what's for you. Are you an investor in technology? Are you an investor in companies that make the place better, or companies that make money? Like, what are your concepts on investing? What's important to you? And I think Cern is, probably the best person on this panel to counsel people on, why investment advice, and not saying this is investment advice, but just in terms of like, how do you approach people in these decisions and have these kind of conversations? I don't know what's right for you out there. I don't know what personally for you. I just know that there's not a person out there that I 100% agree with every single thing that they say. There isn't a person in the world. There's not an object I buy in my household. There's not a friend of mine. There's not anybody in my family where we agree on every single thing. And then you find out what those disagreements are, and you figure out what meaning that has. So that's the way I kind of approach it. Highly analytical, and just take it from there.
Okay, that was great, Jeff. Appreciate everything you just said there. Actually, you're right that Cern is one of the best to ask his question. He runs a financial advisory firm called Brindley Advice. We've done some shows. He's analyzed Tesla stock movement compared to all the Mag 7. He's got a lot of interesting things he discovered. So here's where we are at today with the stock. As you can see here, this is real time. It's now $370. It's fallen $10 even just this morning. And you can see that in January 29th at the earnings call, it popped up. Right. And then it started to, but it's been falling since then. So what is this? Again, none of us really know why it's done this, but what's your thoughts on this, Cern?
Well, First of all, I would echo what Jeff said. I think those comments were excellent. From my perspective as a financial advisor, I take a much longer term view. I'm not really that worried about day-to-day stock price movements. Those reflect really more sentiment and this notion that, Tesla may be a Trump stock. And that may well be true in terms of if there's a Trump trade in the short term. But for me, none of that really matters. I want our clients to be successful long term. We're not into trading any stock. All the noise, all this discussion that we have today will be long since forgotten, if not next week, probably in a few months, and definitely in a few years. And so ultimately what matters is the success of the company. And so when it comes down to whether or not you agree with Elon's political views, you really have to sort of put that in context, because is that going to hurt or help him get Tesla to where you think it might be in a few years? And certainly there's always pros and cons on such a list. And so that's why it's always very important to separate your political views from your investing actions. Because if Tesla is very successful, the stock isn't going to care that you sold it in protest because Elon is, friends with Trump. What really matters, I think, as an investor is, again, focusing on the long term. And if Tesla is super successful and you create massive wealth for you and for your family, you can put that wealth to good use in ways that if you exited the stock under some sort of protest because you don't like what Elon is doing, or you don't like that he's associated with Trump, that to me seems like a fairly poor choice, right? When you could stay with a company, if you analyze the company and you're excited about its long-term future, enjoy the fruits of that, right? And put those to good use in the ways that you think is appropriate. So that's kind of what I counsel our clients on, is really try to separate your political views from your investment approach. I've seen in my 30-year career people that have not successfully done that. They, trade in and out of the stock market depending on who won the presidential election. And that is often a really, really bad decision.
That's very wise words, Cern.
Mhm. I do recommend folks check out some of the videos we've done on this channel with Cern. He deep dives on Tesla stock movement. It's very, very volatile. So I know today people are going, oh, it's because of politics and because of what Elon's doing. It's also just normal movements.
Yeah. We all want a narrative. We all want an explanation for what happened 5 minutes ago. Why did the stock jump? Why did the stock not move today? Doesn't the market know there's good news? Didn't the market see that Farley at Ford's talking about potentially licensing FSD? Shouldn't the stock jump because of all that? Well, there's also a whole bunch of other things going on in the world. And some of those may be perceived as being negative, whether it's what's going on with interest rates or the economy or politically or other things. So I would counsel people to sort of stop looking for those narratives. As Jeff said, focus on the fundamentals of the company. And if you're an investor, you really have to ignore some of the noise. And I think the most successful investors are the ones that are capable of ignoring the noise.
Exactly. And hold through when they're convinced about a stock. And I mean, again, in my career, and I've seen a lot, I've never seen a stock of which I was as convinced as I'm today of Tesla. Now, I also see a lot of comments say, oh, but Elon is not dedicated enough to Tesla. I mean, we've had this discussion for what, the last 5 years, 10 years? I don't even remember. But anyway, did you hear the earnings call last week? Did you have the feeling that this was a CEO who had no clue what's happening? Don't you have the feeling that he is really hands-on whenever there's a problem, but also knows that he has the best teams in place for stuff that is working? So I just, I don't want to hear this crap anymore. Of course, Elon has never been and will never be a CEO from 9 to 5. That's just not his job. That's not how he does it. He is there to give the big strategy and to solve the problems that nobody else can solve. And that is it. And he does that now for the US economy. hallelujah. I mean, could we have had anything better? I love it. If you don't like it, well, fair enough. Then ask yourself whether you want to still stay in the stock, because this is gonna last. Remember, this is gonna last until America's 250th birthday. So we've got a while to go in this ride. This is gonna be volatile. And if you feel that you can't adhere to these fluctuations, to this volatility that is now not only linked to basics of Tesla, it's not your stock. I'm not saying you should sell, but I'm telling you, you're making yourself sick for something that is not going to change just because you don't like it. So either get a perspective. I remember very well the night we were close to $100. I couldn't sleep, and I thought, that's it. I'm not gonna stay in a stock that makes me sleepless nights. That's not the sense of it. And so at the beginning of that night where I couldn't sleep, I told myself, okay, I'm going to get out. I'm gonna have to look for alternatives, but I'm not going to get sick and tired over a stock. It's only money in the end of the day. And by the early morning, it was exactly the opposite. I was telling myself, there is nothing else out there. And what do I need this money for? And when do I need this money for? This was still years to go. I don't need any of this money before 2030. You know what? That calmed me down. And that suddenly gave me the perspective that, what the heck? And thank heavens I didn't sell at $100. Right? So just, give yourself some perspective, get clear about your objectives, when you need this money, when you don't need this money, how much you can take of this. And then you will find where your sweet spot is, and you can either bear it and you'll be very quiet and happy about it, or you can't, and then that's fine too. Then find good alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best analogies that I like to share, and it's a bit corny, and it's probably been said by Warren Buffett, but is to look at investing through a farming analogy.
Yeah.
Right? Farmers plant their crops sometimes in not the best conditions, and they wait for a good long time before they can harvest those crops. When a big storm comes along, they don't dig up the crop to see how it's doing. When the first ear of corn appears, they don't go out and harvest that ear of corn, right? Like it's a whole process, and being a farmer is a very, very difficult job. And it's not unlike investing. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of discipline, and dealing with a lot of things that are unexpected and things that are uncomfortable in order to enjoy the rewards of a successful harvest.
That's actually a very good analogy. My husband invested in a vineyard 32 years ago. For 22 years, we saw no penny. Actually, the opposite was there were capital calls every year. We had to put more capital in it. We had to put more capital in it. It was a period where we raised our 5 young children. It was not the moment where we had a lot of money, and it always came at the worst moment. The last 10 years have been good. But 5 years ago, we were voted best wine in the United States. The moment comes. But it was way above 22 years. And investing in a vineyard really makes you humble, because there is weather, there is fire, there are so many things that can happen where you realize, it's beyond what you can influence, that a little bit of a stock movement is just nothing. For all these people in the comments, because I have to say, Herbert, there are really mean people these days in the YouTube comments, not so much on X, but there seems to be a really concerted effort to go on Tesla YouTube videos and just spew their hate. Well, go ahead, do it. But I'm not mad. I'm just sad for people to be so worried about it. And the thing is, I can't take away your worry, but I can help you try to, balance this out. Understand what is important in this stock for you. Do you see the long-term vision? Can you hold it without, being sick over it? Or do you not? And it's not a criticism in either way, but I think it's very important that from time to time we get back to those fundamentals and ask ourselves those questions.
Yeah. Let's say, so obviously there's a huge group of different kinds of investors, right? There's the people just getting in, and then they're the ones very upset about what Musk is doing. Is the way I look at it is, most of us here, all of us are in the floor here, are long-term investors. I invest in Tesla because of the innovation and the disruptive, capability of disrupting an entire market. So obviously the big ones is electric vehicle, which they've proven they've done. You got Robotaxi, you got bots now, you got AI. So for me, I look at, okay, is Elon impacting the stock? Is it impacting the sales of EVs? Like I said earlier, yes, I do think it's a case. I know, Jeff, you said I can't measure it. I agree with you. I don't know the answer to that truly, but that's, just my sentiment of what's happening. But the impact of the Robotaxi and bots is going to far far outweigh the change that's happening right now. So if I think it's the opposite, that I think that the Elon's antics and Elon's positions and all that is going to be so much more worse than a massive inventing a new robotaxi or inventing bots, then I'd switch. I'd get out of the stock. I would. But right now, I think that we're on track for robotaxi. We're going to talk about robotics next. We're going to talk about what's happening with EVs and the new EVs. Okay. Good discussion on the stock. We needed to talk about it. The stock fell. And there's a few things I want to talk about too that are actually not great news for Tesla. So we need to kind of balance it out, all the things. But the next one is on bots. And this is the next big thing that we're talking about. It is pretty big. That seems to be happening as well. We heard Elon have, huge, ambitious metrics and goals that he's trying to shoot for, right? 10,000 bots this year. He said, yeah, we're not likely going to do that, but certainly several thousand, and then 50,000, 100,000 bots next year. Well, are we seeing signs that the program is progressing or not? This morning, we learned that 68 job openings in 5 locations. So, you can take a look at these jobs that are being advertised in Palo Alto. Take a look at the kinds of jobs. Most of them are engineers, teleoperators, build and release managers. So this is like a lot of these guys are actually manufacturing. One thing that Jeff pointed out several times before is that when you are looking at robotic companies, what you want to see is them hiring manufacturing and factory people. And then you can see that this is what's happening at this point. So quite a number of job openings. They're serious. They're happening. Jeff, we haven't heard you for a while. What's your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think the conversation's been great. I will tell you this: we had a conversation maybe a year ago about Tesla and bot hiring for they call it in the industry the NPI line, or the new product introduction prototype line, and we saw a handful of hires, and I'm like, okay, this is a predecessor to them, building more and more prototypes. And then we went out and looked at other bot pages, and they weren't hiring the same kind of design for manufacturability engineers, the technicians, the specialized people you need to build more and more prototypes. They were not hiring them. I'm not saying they don't have them. Many of them don't have them at the level that Tesla has, but it was a predecessor event. And I said, well, they're building an NPI line, and that's what they did. Now, that's why you see more and more bots out there. This is production line 1. Okay, and what we talked about over the last couple of weeks, Herbert, especially with Elon and his announcement during that CES interview of the 5 to 10K this year, and followed it up at earnings, and then the 50 to 100K. What you typically do as a company building a product like this is you hire for your first production line, and you build your first production line while you're still completing design version 1. I think Elon called it production version 1. When you're completing production version 1 of the product, you in advance of that, you are hiring people to build production line 1 and staff production line 1. And production line 1 will run at lower rates until you get to confirmation of start of production, and then it will start going up a steeper and steeper ramp curve when you get start of production approval. So to frame this up for the viewers, what this means is these are the people that are going to build the 5 to 10,000 robots and Optimus robots. And this is to build that line. And then that line will get transferred into, and it'll be a production apparatus. It'll be capitalized into production. And that will be the line that builds production version 1. And then that NPI line, and maybe even portions of this line, will be used in the background as they start getting data on production version 1 to like, what are the changes we want to make for production version 2, because that'll be the version that goes into production for the 50 to 100,000. So think of these as overlapping product development and ramp efforts. This bot hiring, 60 some folks. This is for production line, and then it's all the ancillary support around it. So you see software, like what are the software people? They're going to do production software that goes in the bot so it can be tested in the production line, for example. So you're going to see all kinds of resources. When I look through the resource tree, that's what they're doing, and it's a great sign.
Fantastic. Yeah, you've been ahead of this, and the other person who's really been ahead of this is Cern. Cern is, we call him the bot bull. Lots of research on this. What's your take on these job openings, Cern?
Well, I think it's a very encouraging sign. And I think it fits with Elon's comments on the earnings call about their desired production for this year, targeting 10,000, maybe making several thousand. I wanted to ask Jeff if this is sort of consistent in terms of the timing of hiring these folks. I'd imagine it would take 2 or 3 months perhaps to get this team hired and set up. And Jeff, is that sort of consistent with a third quarter, fourth quarter production build?
Yeah, think of it like a concentric circle that kind of spirals out. So there'll be certain resource types like the operators on the line you can hire within days and weeks. And then you'll get to the material folks, that'll be maybe more days and a few more weeks. And then you'll get to the technicians, it's a little bit more. But think of it kind of that spiral. The other thing is, like, they don't need to go, this won't be a zero staffed build up for these 62 employees that they hire are not going to be encapsulated, the 62 employees that ramp this product. They're going to bring over Tesla Auto people to seed this effort, get it started. And then the Tesla Auto people are going to train these people. Some of the Tesla Auto people may permanently transfer and stay. And then some of these will turn into backfills if needed for the auto side. So that's the way they'll do it. In terms of the time frame, I looked at these roles, to me, and Tesla moves pretty quickly. The higher level roles take a little bit longer to hire, but there's no reason that a lot of this couldn't be staffed over, call it, the next 2 to 4 or 5 months.
What I see here is another signal that shows that production design 1 of the bot is ready for production. And you're always looking for the signals, and here's one. I'm going to start hiring hundreds of people now to show you that we're ready to start the production line.
Yeah, so you're right. It's a commitment. It's a commitment on capital. It's a commitment on these are R&D dollars, some of these, and then some of these are production dollars that are non-absorbed. So yeah, you're making a monetary commit based on all your other readiness indicators. It's a big commit.
I would just add that if you know anybody in your family or in your circle of friends that has the skills, I think, to be hired by Tesla, I can't imagine a more exciting project to work on than to see the first humanoid robots come off the production line and be involved in something that this product is truly going to change the world. It cannot be overestimated how profound the impact of intelligent humanoid labor is going to be. So to be on the front lines of that, so to speak, I think would be an exciting thing. So please encourage anybody that you know that has any inclination to join Tesla in this effort to apply for these jobs.
I was trying to get my daughter to work at a humanoid bot company because I'm saying the same thing you, sir. Don't you know this is going to be the greatest thing? She's so afraid, just won't do it. I mean, she's also the kind of person who's afraid of butterflies. Like, what? It's like the most beautiful thing in the world. So some people just don't want to be inside this, it's just creepy for some, right?
It is, but what an opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
If she gets on the inside, Herbert, she can learn all the cheat codes to shut it down and make it do other things. So
well, I've said all sorts of things. I doesn't want to be near the factory at all.
Yeah.
And that's what I keep telling folks. Okay. I keep saying this, and tell me if I'm wrong, but imagine 1,000 bots inside the factory, all doing some useful work.
Yeah.
And imagine 2,000. That's like a gymnasium full. I've asked Grok several times, show me a photo of 1,000 robots in like one shot. I don't know if that does not trigger the investment community out there to realize this is a real deal. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's going to be a wild visual. I agree that visual is going to trigger different kinds of thoughts. I think it's going to be an amazing visual. I would also take 10 seconds to encourage people, just to trail on what Cern was saying. If you get a chance and you want to change careers, you get a chance to work in a factory. These aren't all factory jobs, by the way. Mm-hmm. But if you get a chance to do it, you should try it. If you get a chance, if you have a rotation, or if there's just some way for you to do, I really recommend doing this. You'll be the experience is so enlightening in terms of being part of the process to manufacture something and understand both what's technically involved and also kind of the emotions around building a product and the accomplishment of seeing something go from raw materials to a finished product. It's a good feeling, and we're going to need this skill set in the United States because I actually think that there's going to be several geopolitical confines around humanoids. I just don't think that this is something that we're just going to, hey, everybody gets it. I don't think that's the way it's going to work. That's a debate for another show. But I encourage people, if you have a chance to do a job in manufacturing, to do it, because it could be a lot. I've often thought of when you can work in a factory. If you build factories in the United States, it creates the biggest and best ladder for people to ascend inside of a system, because you can come in as an operator and then you can figure out how to analyze the product. All of a sudden you can figure out how to be the production supervisor. Then all of a sudden you can be the shifter, the shift manager. Then all of a sudden you can be the director of the site. And this could be the person that started assembling the product a year or two prior. I've seen it happen so many times. And I just encourage people, if you had a chance to get into manufacturing, and this is an industry that the United States should take a leadership position and hold a leadership position. And I understand that China is going to build 1,000 humanoids. That's fine. A lot of those things are going to start and spiral out. I'm talking about making something that's truly beneficial and useful for humanity. So that's just my 30-second commercial, maybe longer, on get a manufacturing job.
Sounds like you were pretty passionate about that, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am.
So let me bring it back, right? So I was saying the 6 keys that matter to invest in Tesla, right? So we looked at Robotaxi, we looked at robots, but underpinning all of that is AI. And I would submit that if you want to know the success of Tesla, you should be following very closely how they're doing with AI compute. Agreed? We all agree, right? So the problem that I've been saying for a week now is that this is the one missing information we did not get from the earnings call. We did not see a 2025 plan for how much compute they're going to buy. We saw the dollars. Alexandra, you can share more information about that, but we did not see yet how much compute, which they've been sharing. ARK Invest shared this a couple days ago, and they this is a complicated scale, but they're talking about autonomous ability for Tesla to reach human safety levels of miles between critical intervention. But on the x-axis, it is the amount of compute in H100 equivalent GPUs. And so, right, I think we know for sure we're at 50,000, so we're right around here. But we understand that they've already got 100,000 H100 equivalent compute already, so we're pretty confident they're going to get here. If they get to 120,000, this is, again, ARK Invest estimates, which they think will happen by March of this year. So just February, we're February now, next month, we should get here. Then that will get us, they believe, 10,000 miles between critical intervention, which is equivalent to one person driving for an entire year. And then you would get one critical intervention in that experience. So they think that that's going to happen by March. They believe that you need to get up to 190,000 H100s equivalents to be able to hit the 700,000 miles between critical intervention, and that's the safety level. They think it's going to happen in October. So first comment I made was, I'm hoping Tesla will release that. Here's our plan for 2025. Alexandra, what's your thinking about this estimates here, or the fact that they haven't shown that table that I've been asking for?
I mean, you find this a strange scale because it's a log scale, right? So
it's a log scale.
The difference between 1 and 10 is the same than the difference between 100,000 and a million at the upper level. So it's not as intuitive for you to see it. If this would not be a log scale, you would see the exponential growth much easier, right? This is actually trying to put a highly steep exponential curve into something that can be shown in a rectangular version and for people who understand log scales easily, but for everybody else, it's a little bit surprising. Now, the good news is obviously the 190,000 to be there in October 25, right? Again, I just want to make sure people understand how capital efficient Tesla is. When we hear the Metas or the Microsoft or the Googles of this world, it is always a question of 50, 60, 70, 100 billion new investments, right? In GPUs, in hardware, in all this infrastructure. Tesla has done 6 billion last year, 6 billion, and is at a point where hardly anybody else is. And we'll be at a point in October, which is more or less the double of where we are now, with another 6 billion. So the capital efficiency of this company, it doesn't have anything even halfway comparable, right? And that is the point where we will be at ultimate safety, where we'll be ready for Robotaxi, where we'll be there. So I always want to caution a little bit about the ARC. Yeah, let me do a little drawback on ARC. I like Cathie Wood. I think she has been crucial in helping Tesla being accepted by the markets, understood by the markets. She has been a thought leader on lots of those things. I'm not a big fan of their fund management. I've said it. We've done specials on that with their 10% limits and all this crap. No, I'm not. But their research has always been highly appreciated. Now, some of their research is built on that Monte Carlo scenario implications and all that. So it's not always, I mean, it may be intellectually what people love to see, but it just doesn't ring right as an investor who is grounds up, right? Who understands the company grounds up. You just wonder why there are suddenly all these eccentric scenarios put into the calculations. But be it, that's not my point. But the credit I want to give them is that they are just regularly, every 6 and 12 months, putting their ideas out, throwing this into the public space. Nobody else does that. I mean, Adam Jonas, I'm not even coming back on his LiDAR question, but his research is always very punctual, right? There is no real vision for 6 to 12 to 24 months out there. So I want to give them that credit, and I think they deserve that we talk about it, and just reassure everybody that this is absolutely doable for Tesla. They've announced the 6 billion for last year. They have reconfirmed it will be the same amount this year. So here we are.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
I thought it was interesting on the earnings call, Elon talking about what the compute needs might be for the bot, saying that the bot, has 1,000 times more uses than a car. The scaling of the compute needs might be 10x rather than 1,000x. But he's talking about, I think he mentioned 500 billion needed to be spent on compute potentially. He threw out that number pretty casually. But there's no doubt that Tesla will continue to spend on compute. They'll continue to spend very wisely and probably get more value out of their spend than most companies do. Elon seems to be highly capable of doing that. But there is certainly, even if they reach this milestone by October of this year, they will need to continue to improve FSD and continue to spend on compute. This is the key differentiator, I think, between Tesla and any other company that is pursuing autonomy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to add to your comments and Alexander's. I thought were both super relevant. When in the compute world and you're buying silicon, the Elon conversation with Jensen is different than any other company, any other CEO's company conversation. Number one is he's leading in getting the product into doing real world AI. And Jensen sees that was the top of Jensen's graph in terms of value and AI creating value. And he knows that Elon's ahead of that with his team and his company. The second thing is when you're NVIDIA and you're having, and I've been in both sides of these shoes, when you're having the conversation with Elon, you're having the conversation with somebody that has two major outlets for your product. He has the XAI outlet and Grok 3, and you see what's happening. And then he has the Tesla outlet for your product. So when you're thinking about supply insurance, and if you're TSMC, if you're NVIDIA, if you're all the downstream players, Elon himself is so valuable to them. His feedback is so valuable to them. His place in line My guess, it goes way up. Not only for this reason, the fact that he has two outlets for the product, so you have demand redundancy. It's very important in this. Everybody's scared about an AI pause. There's a digestion phase coming. Well, guess what? In order to really analyze and understand that phase, you better be looking upstream. And you better be looking at what's going on all the way at the packaging houses, the wafer fabs, and all the pull-ins that are happening. The people that run those multi-billion-dollar operations, they have scores of people that are going all the way downstream and looking at the demand, and then are going all the way upstream. Do you think that they're just waiting for a call from a company and saying, yep, take your capacity up, 100? But so what's happening with chip on wafer on substrate scale, it's doubling and tripling over the year. Do you think they're just doing that because somebody made a phone call and asked them to do that? Or do you think that they have people looking downstream at the demand and verifying the demand, saying, is that real or not? And where's my redundancy? So I just want to make a comment. The Elon conversation is very different than any other CEO. I think Tesla and they get priority. I think he also pays for it as well. I think he pays for expedites, but he knows on the other side of it that he's going to get the product faster and turn it into something revenue recognizable faster. And the silicon vendors understand that as well. So it's kind of a good virtuous cycle. They're actually in a very good spot here. And I would say if they weren't. But anyway, I just want to make a comment that the Elon relationship is very different on compute versus anyone else.
Oh, love it, guys. Okay, NVIDIA, good relationship, like you said, with Elon. We know that already. We're going to continue seeing that, I think. So let's move on to the next topic, which is electric vehicles. There's a lot of misunderstanding on what is happening in January, whether or not Elon's politics is causing everything to crash and fail. Let's. I'm going to go through a few slides here, and then we'll have Jeff approach us. Says, you got a comment here, right, Alexandra? Somebody said, curious what you and the Bulls think of this.
Yes,
There's a recent $2,500 referral for the Model 3. So they increased the Model 3 referral to not only $2,000, but they increased it to $2,500. Got me thinking that the new model may be closer than anyone thinks. Assuming that the new model will take away some sales, they may be trying to reduce inventory on the 3. Tesla always has a reason for what they do. So he's saying that they're gonna try to push the existing Model 3 now, because once the new more affordable vehicles come, they want to make sure that they got inventory right size. Then you got another thought here. Some people think that the sales of Tesla sales of electric vehicles in Germany has fallen significantly in January, while battery electric vehicles generally is increased. Is it because of politics? This is sort of the stats here. Jeff, you came to say, hey, it's you kind of find it weird, the obsession of people looking at 1 month sales, and then you explain what happened at the end of 2024 and what happened to inventory. Can you explain what you're answering there?
Yeah, it's a long explanation that I will distill down, which is there are not single causes for events like this. They're complicated, and you have to assign weightings to what's happening. When Tesla took their stock down to their inventory, their channel inventory globally down to 12 days, you have to realize that and what companies, when you measure days of sales, or if you look at days of inventory, they're different equations. Some are based on dollars and some are based on units. But just if you look at how to equalize stock levels and understand and channel, like what rate of stock should I have, what rate of turnover should I have, there are levels required based on your production, your sellout rate, to keep the product available, so that somebody walks into a Tesla store, somebody wants to get access to a new Tesla somewhere, they want to go in, they want to buy them, want to walk out with the vehicle. If it's not that day, it's the next day. That's how vehicle purchases mostly work. Tesla is a build-to-order model, but they also put product into available inventory, new inventory for sales as well, because they realize as their sales grow, you can't just be build to order only, because you won't serve the whole population. So there's a certain stock level in terms of days of supply that are needed to have there's a days of supply level needed to have an in-stock percentage of greater than 80%. As soon as your in-stock percentage of available product falls below various thresholds, you're in what's called stock out conditions, and there's various levels of stock out conditions. And ultimately what you're measuring is what is the probability of somebody wanting a vehicle, wanting the instant satisfaction of buying a vehicle, being able to actually buy a Tesla. And when you take it down to 12 and you understand the logistics time of a car leaving a factory to a car being available at an end point, a fully landed point of sale, you realize that most of that 12 days of inventory, which is transit time is counted, is actually taken up in transit time. So there's actually not a lot of product available for sale. And there's nobody on the internet. I'm going to be very clear to you. There's nobody on the internet. There's nobody on Twitter, including me, that can tell you how many Teslas are available perfectly. You can't, there's no search. It's a constant, there's nobody that knows how many are in transit. Okay. Besides Tesla, of course, they're the only ones that are going to know it. So my higher order bit on this call, this whole conversation of people hyperventilating about January sales is the following. There's more than one cause. Could there be demand issues? Absolutely, there could be a demand issue. Could there be the fact that they took their stock and channel down to 12 days because they're doing a transition on their number one selling product that's 65% of their production, and they wanted to take that inventory level down so they didn't leave any stranded material or cars in channel? That's more likely. That's probably most of it, but it's not all one thing is the point. The final point is, if you look at just 1 month of sales, you are running into the dangers of their distribution techniques and what they're doing. For example, if you look at one region, say, well, why aren't they selling more cars? Well, some regions receive product from China, and there's different schedules within a quarter. So when you're looking at inventory or you're looking at sales, you can look at a monthly view, but you've got to do the proper comps to the proper point in time. And then, like I said, even if you did a January to January comp and said, I'm going to do a January 25 to 24 comp, well, when we left 2023 into 2024, we didn't have 12 days of sales. We probably had 1.5 times or double that. So you had more product. It's called beginning on hand available to sell in. Again, I'm not saying there's one cause. It's the low inventory or it's the Model Y transition. I'm saying that you have to assign that as part of it. You may assign some level of demand as part of it as well, but it's not all one thing is the point.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Honestly, we're very, very fortunate to have your experience, you explaining this. There's just so much nuance to this, and people just jump to the easy thing and say, that's what it is. Tesla's sales demands are falling. Could be, but it also, please take a look at the whole thing.
It's more than one thing. It's more than one thing. And I will tell you, technically,
Always.
the 12 days of inventory, those are stock out levels, because you have to analyze, and actually Cern has done this before, as the number of points of distribution and their time span for product to reach it. And what you will find is there are many points of distribution that take 18 days, 20 days, 24 days. And all those points of distribution, many of them get stocked out. Or even the points of distribution that are inside of the 12 days have insufficient stock levels as a result of that net inventory being taken down. So there is actually a mechanical thing that you could analyze and look at and understand, like, what does it mean to the sales of the next month? I could have told you. Somebody asked me a question like, how are January sales going to be? Like, if they go down to 12 days, they're going to be pretty shitty. They got to build the channel back up. And unfortunately, it's not just turning on a spigot. You're building a new product. Sorry,
exactly.
Alexandra.
We said that at the earnings, completely right. And the other thing not to be forgotten is Q1 is always bad, right? If you look car sales worldwide, everywhere, Q1 is always the most difficult quarter. So I just find this very short-term thinking. You know, it is what it is. We do know there is a new model. There are new models with an S coming in the next quarter. So yes, that could be, a point of wanting to now stimulate as much of the current inventory and the current production as it is. But I mean, if we want to try to micromanage Tesla, and the inventory level, we're lacking 99% of the data points to be able to do so, right? So
100%,
speculating here and trying to reason something or excuse something or make people feel comfortable about it. People, come on, look at this company. Look what is coming the next 2-3 years. If you can see that, you think it matters how many Model 3s and at what
in
incentive
January.
they sell now? It
Exactly.
doesn't. It just doesn't. No, it's not bag of works. I mean, there are a couple of people in these comments. They are really, really nasty. And I'm sorry, I feel they are politically motivated. They're obviously against what's happening currently in the administration. I'm sorry to say so. You lost these elections. Better get used to it. And if you feel that the Tesla platforms and what we're giving here in the cyber balls as information is the point of you spewing your hate, well, get out of here of this crap. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry, actually.
Maybe a good time for me to reiterate my philosophy for this channel. It's that we're not here to talk politics, and I'm pretty clear about that. But if it's associated with Elon and or not Elon, but Tesla stock or business, we do need to address it. So that's what I thought we were doing today. So hopefully, what people agree or don't agree, but we'll see. Okay, we have one more bit of news here to share. Next week, we got Prime Minister Modi from India is coming to the US, going to meet with Elon as well as other CEOs. This is a long conversation of what this means. It may mean nothing. Obviously, there was this, lots of heat a year ago, right? We all thought that something was happening in India. Even India themselves kind of announced something was going to happen, and then it fizzled off. It could have a lot to do with India and China, and China not wanting India to build out an EV industry because China wants to own it. So there's a lot of that happening. But it's they're going to meet again. So
it means a lot, actually.
Oh,
you're
sure.
right. You're right. No, Herbert, you're correct in your assertion of like it could be nicey just connecting again, but I actually think it means a lot.
And also just quick point, Modi's the one coming to Elon.
Yeah. Well, he's coming to the U.S. and he's coming to this meet. I think it's important because there's important FSD negotiations, data integrity. There's negotiations happening with China. And there's negotiations happening at a Tesla level, and of course, there's negotiations happening at a country to country level. And I really think it's important. I think Tim Cook and Elon are the most visible China kind of centric CEOs out there, and I do a lot of work in this space in my day job, and I will tell you that the whole geopolitical of like where are we going to build shit globally and not get shut down is on top of on everybody's mind. So I do think that it's important for Tesla to have leverage with India with respect to China. China wants to hold on to this EV lead. They want to hold on to this humanoid robotics piece that they think they have, and they have it all the way back to the mineral level as well. So I think this is very important for them from a leverage perspective. And I would just leave it at that this conversation at multiple tiers, whether it's tariffs. And by the way, India is a highly, highly protectionist country when it comes to tariff, even way more than China. So it'd be interesting to see if there's anything that kind of can be unlocked. But I will tell you right now, people building product and trying to figure out where the hell they can build it and ship it is on everybody's mind. Everybody thought in the last 5 years that Vietnam was a safe haven. And it turns out that it could be on the bullseye list as well, because if you look at what's happened now with everybody moving it there as a secondary site, it has turned out that there's a huge trade imbalance right now between the U.S. and Vietnam. And it's interesting to say, like, everything always no, but it's just interesting to say, like, oh my God, this country has so much of their exports coming to the U.S. It just turns into a point of leverage conversation that I think President Trump may exploit. So just there's a lot of geopolitical tensions right now with tariffs and trade. And so I think there's Tesla meeting, and then there's U.S. government, major global. U.S. government meeting by Modi being here.
Global. It's all global. I mean, India, China, this is where it's really happening, the whole production science. And Modi was here before. Remember, we had Modi visits. We had Elon supposed to go to India and then canceling, supposed to go later, then never went. So there are lots of things. There are lots of things that have been, waiting. People have been waiting for this administration to be in place. And now it's happening. And Elon will be associated to so much more because he's there. There are people speculating whether he will be with President Trump at the Super Bowl on Sunday or not, right? So that's just it. We have a stock that has that political dimension. We will benefit from it. I honestly think that FSD in the United States will progress much quicker because of Elon's involvement in this administration. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong on that point.
And if I could make one political statement, don't worry, Herbert, that I think sums up the way Elon thinks, is he is not married to the Republican Party. He is married to a set of ideals around free speech, around a number of different platforms that tend to align to one party, maybe today versus the other. But he grew up as kind of he was all the way up through Biden and voting for Democrats. I know people know that, but I think it's important to know that I don't think he's married to one party per se. He's married to a platform of ideas that happen to exist right now, and they're not perfect, but they exist in one party versus another. He could flip, like if those ideals shift or change, or another party emerges that is kind of more aligned with what he could shift on it. It's just the way he is. So I think it's important to note that I don't think he left one party and maybe one party left him. I don't know. I don't want to say that, and no party's perfect in terms of their platform, but I think he's aligned to a platform, not so much the person. And he turns out he likes working with that person and that party, but I think it's more the platform.
I also think it's, go ahead, Jeff, or Cern.
When I think of the meeting with Modi, I think of it with a lens looking at humanoid bots. So think about this. Obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, we know the answer to this question is obvious. If you are a leader of a country or any company, and you've got computing technology that's invented, you better make sure that you secure access to that for your company and your country. Obviously, that's important with the benefit of hindsight. We all know that. Okay, here comes along the next big thing. Humanoid robots. Okay, it's AI, it's compute, it's labor, all wrapped into one. If you don't have access to that technology in your company, in your country, you are not going to be competitive really quickly. Like, give it a decade. So if you are the leader of China, India, any country in the world, you better make sure that you have taken the steps to make sure that your country has secured that technology, that your country is involved in that, and all roads lead to Elon at this point with respect to that. Now, China clearly is on the forefront of humanoid robot technology. We see all these companies and all the videos that come out every single week of all these Chinese companies. India is probably not going to be partnering with any of the Chinese companies. So again, all roads lead to Elon on that front.
And I would just add one quick thing to what Cern said. I think Tesla is blocked without Elon. I look at this the other day. I think they would have been blocked if Elon didn't have this proximity to government to work on the AI regulatory framework with, kind of getting David Sachs seated in that role with others, but the AI framework, the autonomy framework for vehicles, and then how do we safely introduce humanoids, and just that whole concept of introducing humanoids into the populace. If Elon wasn't connected closely with government, I don't think that unlock. I don't think it would be possible. Tesla could have the best technology in the world, and they would have been blocked, and they would have been hamstrung and tied down from a regulatory perspective. So the regulatory unlock, and then the regulatory framework creation of Elon being that close inside of the government, to me is critical to unlock Tesla's value. So it's actually the other side of the equation. Everybody thinks that there's value destruction, and it may be in the short term. It's arguable. What's not arguable, if the regulatory framework didn't allow these things to scale and ramp and allowed other countries to get ahead of us, we would be dead. That is undeniable.
Exactly. And the other thing is, because you mentioned David Sachs, and I want to have Cern's opinion on that. So people always say, oh, you never criticize anything they do. Well, I do. I actually do. For example, last Wednesday, I really didn't like that they took all the Bitcoin profit by changing to the different accounting standards, right? So now the 600 million that were waiting there between the lowest Bitcoin, they bought at a certain price, and then the old accounting standards obliged them to take the hit when Bitcoin went lower, and then it was frozen at the lowest level. It could have obviously gone down even further if the Bitcoin price would have gone down, but it didn't go down. That was our point for what, 9 months, 12 months? I mean, for a long time, it was just sitting there. Just to recall to everybody, we're about 11,000 Bitcoin, 11 and something thousand Bitcoin. And so last quarter, and I understand why they did it, because obviously it gave them suddenly this 600 million of extraordinary additional revenues. They changed the accounting standards, which I think, but Cern, you know much better, was an obligation. If you changed, you had to change before the year end 2024, right? There was a limit to it. So anyway, they changed last quarter, and so now we have them at a mark-to-market value. And every end of quarter, we'll have to look at the Bitcoin price and we have to adjust to it. We can't go back. So the whole unrealized gain that was set aside and was sort of a reserve is now in it. And from now on, we're having, I mean, it is a small proportion still of Tesla's results, but it is now introducing the volatility to have every end of quarter to adapt to the then current Bitcoin price. Do I see this right, Cern?
You do. It will make will increase the volatility of Tesla's earnings a little bit. It remains to be seen over time how much Bitcoin Tesla will end up owning. Right now, I think they're the fourth or fifth largest corporate holder of Bitcoin worldwide, as far as I know. So it's a decent position, about $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. But I think analysts are capable of excluding, whatever they want to exclude out of earnings, whether it's stock-based compensation, whether it's one-time charges, whether it's ongoing Bitcoin profits or losses. So I'm not really particularly worried about that.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. So what we did is today, I think, a very good, incredibly intelligent discussion on the most important things to talk about, whether or not Tesla is a good company or not. I think we're just at the very beginning, right? Every country, every state leader is going to want to talk to Tesla. We're talking about humanoid robots. We're talking about autonomous vehicles. We're talking about AI. We're talking about megapack, energy stationary storage, and we're talking about I'm missing something, electric vehicles, of course. So, what I try to do here is bring in the best minds, and I really appreciate, we got Alexandra Mertz, we got Jeff Lutz, we got Cern for this week, and follow everybody here, follow them. Thank you, everybody, by the way. Just yesterday, I hit 100,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. Pretty quickly, I think it was about 2.5 years. So I really do appreciate that, folks. And my goal is to bring the best. I think, the channel has always been about interviewing other people. And, I try to bring whoever's out there who's smartest to bring in and let's hear their voices. And I think I've got 3 of the best. And I appreciate this. This is Cyberbulls. Follow us. We show up every Wednesday or every Thursday at 9 o'clock Pacific time. And last comments, guys?
Yeah, no, just Herbert, you do the work you do in the background. Many people don't see that you not only just try to bring the best out, but you curate the conversation and you do the homework in the background, and you frame up what the conversation and how it's going to flow, and you get the best use out of the people so you don't just bring people on, you do the work in the background, and the work product that comes out, what people see is a function of your skills and your knowledge in the industry. Like you know a lot of stuff. You don't give yourself enough credit, and your production of it is really the value, and everybody else comes in and really helps. But you don't give yourself enough credit, and just congratulations, well deserved.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody.
And we're so honored to be yours. This is great.
Yeah, right. I owed you. I'm just kidding. All right, guys. Bye all.
You take care.
Bye.